What happens when morning television's calmest voice meets the most polarizing guest in pop culture? What begins as a glossy, polite interview on Good Morning America turns into a slow-motion train wreck, one clipped answer at a time, until dignity snaps like a mic cable pulled too hard. Today, we revisit the clash between Lara Spencer and Meghan Markle. A conversation that started with sunshine and ended in a studio thunderstorm. The Good Morning America studio looked like it always did at this hour. Warm lights, a soft haze of gold coming off the set pieces, the slow ballet of camera cranes and teleprompters. Lara Spencer sat center frame in a tailored yellow suit, posture elegant, smile effortless. The kind of presence that makes viewers top off their coffee and trust the day will behave. The band's sting faded, applause rolled, and the chyron read, Meghan Markle, Purpose, Privacy, and Power. Good morning, everybody, Lara said, voice bright but gentle. Our next guest is a philanthropist, a producer, a best-selling author. Meghan Markle is here. Meghan swept in like a sealed envelope from somewhere important. Cream blouse, navy pencil skirt, hair perfectly loose, a diamond flash at the wrist. She settled into the velvet chair across from Lara and crossed one leg with choreography. Thanks for having me, she said. The smile was measured. The eyes were already assessing the angles of the room. Lara led with grace. So many people were moved by your recent work around mental health advocacy. For viewers at home who might be struggling, what concrete tools have helped you most? Meghan's smile cooled a degree. Well, Lara, I think people expect tips and tricks like we're doing a lifestyle segment. Healing is larger than that. It's about voice, autonomy, boundaries. She pronounced the last word like a polished stone. When you understand those, you don't need tools. You need alignment. Alignment, Lara echoed, nodding thoughtfully. For some, that might mean community or therapy. It might, Meghan cut in softly. Or it might mean refusing to entertain reductive questions. She smiled again, prettily, pointedly. A ripple crossed the audience. Lara's reply landed like a silk pillow. I appreciate the clarity. Let's talk purpose then. You and Prince Harry launched several initiatives, scholarships, veteran support, digital well-being. Which program has surprised you with its impact? Meghan considered as if choosing a worthy recipient for her attention. All of them. But to be transparent, I don't measure impact in headlines or applause. I measure it in the energy we've shifted. People can feel when systems are being asked to evolve. Results can be hard to quantify in the short term, Lara agreed. Still, is there a story you carry with you? Someone who reached out. A change you could see. Meghan's lashes lowered. There are many. I tend not to share them on cue. A pause. Privacy. Remember? The cameraman's fingers tightened on the focus ring. Lara's smile didn't flicker. Completely fair. Let's go to craft. You've moved from acting to producing and hosting. What creative muscles are you using now that you didn't on set? That assumes acting didn't require leadership, Meghan said lightly. It did. I've always captained my space. The difference now is that people notice. Lara's eyes softened. She pivoted with the seasoned grace of a ballroom dancer, avoiding a heel snag. You've spoken about authorship of your narrative. Many women find that empowering, especially those balancing work and motherhood. What does a typical morning look like in your home? Meghan's laugh was perfectly pitched and just a touch cool. We don't do typical in my home. I'm not sure moms need another celebrity pretending we all make dinosaur pancakes before yoga. I have a staff. I have structure. I have help because I create big things. I'm comfortable saying that. Somewhere behind camera too, a producer mouthed, wow. Then scribbled a note. Lara nodded, unbothered. Honesty can be a relief. There's freedom in acknowledging support systems. Precisely, Meghan replied. Which is why it's odd when interviewers ask for relatability like a receipt. The line floated between them like perfume. Pleasant, then oddly sharp in the throat. Lara reached for a new card, but the motion was theater. She didn't need it. Let's touch on your upcoming series, Lara said. You've teased conversations with women in high-pressure roles, athletes, scientists, founders. What question are you most excited to ask them? Meghan brightened, the first true light of the morning. I'm always interested in what they refused. The job they didn't take, the man they didn't marry, the smallness they walked away from. She glanced at the audience and let the sentence glow. Saying no is a superpower. Sometimes saying no is also a privilege, Lara said gently. Do you worry that message can land differently for viewers who don't have the safety net to refuse opportunities? Meghan folded her hands in her lap, the ring catching light like a tiny camera flash. Sometimes the limitation is mindset. People underestimate how much of their shine is imagined. The room cooled on the monitor. Everything looked gorgeous. Two beautiful women, good posture, good lighting. In the air between them, a thin wire hummed. Lara kept her tone warm. Imagination is powerful. Absolutely. I think people watching might also be looking for empathy around constraints that aren't imagined. Rent, childcare, healthcare. Meghan's smile thinned. I'm aware of the world, she added almost sweetly. Are you? A soft O bubbled from the risers. Lara took a breath so quiet it barely moved her shoulders. Let's reframe, she said. When the documentary came out, many felt inspired. Others felt confronted. If you could rewrite any single moment, not to appease critics, but to sharpen your intention, what would it be? Meghan tilted her head, a queen weighing mercy. I don't rewrite. I iterate. And I prefer not to uplift the critiques of people who haven't built anything. It was not a raised voice. It was not even unkind. It was simply higher ground claimed like real estate. Building requires feedback, Lara said, still velvet. I ask because your platform is enormous. With that comes impact and responsibility. Meghan's eyes glittered. I'm familiar with responsibility. That's why I'm careful where I sit. A few laughs tittered, nervous, polite. Lara's smile finally, barely faltered. She recovered in the same breath. I'm glad you're here. Viewers want to hear about the work. So, let me ask something promised in our tease. What does accountability look like for institutions you've criticized? And for you, outcomes, Meghan said quickly. Programs funded, lives improved, discourse elevated. When those who profit from harm are uncomfortable, that's also a metric. And for you personally? Lara asked. Mom. Meghan's gaze held steady. I have never been more aligned. Silence pressed its palm to the glass of the control room. The stage manager hovered near the commercial cue like a lifeguard watching a gray wave. Lara lifted the moment with a practiced sparkle. We'll take a quick break, she said, turning to camera. When we come back, Meghan opens up about creative risk, a new project she's hinting at, and what she wants her legacy to be. She turned back, smile softening kindly. Stay with us. Applause rose on command, and the music stitched a bright seam across the room. On the wide shot, the set looked like a postcard, Manhattan morning and tasteful gold. In the close-ups, though, something else had arrived. A hint of frost around the edges, hairline cracks in the porcelain. It wasn't a fight, not yet. It was the prelude audiences feel in their bones. The knowledge that the next question might be the one that knocks the table, spills the coffee, and sends the day in a direction no producer planned. The studio applause faded as the band's notes dissolved into the hum of lights overhead. Lara Spencer leaned in, smiling softly at Meghan Markle across the polished desk. She had weathered sharp answers before from CEOs, athletes, even politicians, but rarely had a guest wrapped condescension in charm as deftly as Meghan. Still, Lara's posture remained immaculate, her voice as steady as her reputation. Welcome back, she said warmly. We're here with Meghan Markle discussing her projects and perspective on building purpose in today's world. Meghan adjusted a strand of hair behind her ear and offered a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. She sat back in her chair like someone presiding over a deposition rather than a morning interview. Lara's first question of the segment was simple, almost a gift. You've been very open about wanting to inspire women to step into leadership roles. What advice would you give to young women watching today who feel overlooked? Meghan's response was smooth, but laced with a sharper edge than necessary. Well, first I'd tell them not to wait for permission from morning shows or anyone else to matter. If you know your worth, you don't need validation from an institution or an interviewer. The audience gave a scattered clap, but the air shifted. Light approval tangled with unease. Lara kept her composure, nodding. Fair enough, she said evenly. But many young women watching don't have access to the same resources or platforms. How do they start practically? Meghan tilted her head, voice soft but patronizing. Practically, Lara, I think sometimes practicality becomes the excuse people use to play small. My message is, stop asking how to start. Just begin. The details follow those with courage. It was delivered like a sermon. The words were polished, but the superiority dripped. Lara folded her hands neatly in her lap, her voice steady. Courage is essential, she agreed. But even the most courageous often need systems of support, mentorship, funding, opportunities. Opportunities, Meghan repeated, her smile sharpening. Opportunities find those who are prepared to take them. I prepared. I claimed my space. Not everyone is willing to do that. The audience shifted again, murmurs rising like a tide. Lara, ever the professional, smoothed the edges. Let's turn to your creative work, she offered. Your new project has been described as innovative and groundbreaking. What risks did you take creatively that you're most proud of? Meghan exhaled through her nose with a faint laugh. Risks? I don't really see them as risks. When you operate at my level, innovation is the standard, not the gamble. People call it risk because they can't imagine moving without a safety net. For me, it's just Tuesday. A beat of silence hung in the room before the applause sign flashed. The audience clapped dutifully, though the sound felt thinner this time. Lara's eyes softened, her smile unwavering, though the tension in her jaw betrayed a flicker of strain. I admire that confidence, she said gently. Still, I think risk resonates with people because it reflects vulnerability. Do you think showing more vulnerability could make your message even stronger? Meghan's eyebrows arched almost imperceptibly. I think I've been vulnerable enough for a lifetime. And honestly, the world doesn't need another woman crying on cue to prove she's human. We've evolved past that. The words cut, and though Meghan's tone remained cool, the audience reacted, some gasping, others stiffening in their seats. Lara's composure held, but her smile no longer touched her eyes. Well, Lara said softly, many viewers might feel that vulnerability is what connects us most deeply. Meghan leaned forward, her voice dripping with certainty. Connection isn't built on weakness, Lara. It's built on power. If people want relatability, they can look to their neighbor. I didn't come here to be relatable. The statement landed like a stone thrown into glass. The room cracked with tension. Lara's head tilted just slightly, her practiced calm still intact. I think many would argue that relatability and power aren't opposites, she replied. That sometimes the strongest thing you can do is show people they're not alone. Meghan's smile thinned again, sharp as a blade. And sometimes the strongest thing you can do is remind them they don't need you. The audience sat frozen. The soft murmur of whispers suggested more than a few were unsettled. Lara inhaled quietly, then shifted cards on the desk. Let's move to family life, she said, her tone warm again. Balancing career and family is something so many women wrestle with. How do you navigate that balance? Meghan laughed lightly, but it was edged with dismissal. Balance is a myth. Let's stop pretending otherwise. My children know I'm building something historic, and one day they'll thank me for it. I don't need to perform domestic normalcy for anyone's comfort. A hush spread across the studio. Lara's smile softened again, though her eyes were visibly cooler. Many mothers watching might feel torn hearing that. They may not have the luxury of choosing between normalcy and ambition. Meghan shrugged, the movement elegant and dismissive. Then maybe ambition isn't for everyone. The audience gasped. For the first time, a ripple of disapproval hummed audibly through the crowd. Lara took a breath, her voice still calm, but firmer now. Ambition takes many forms, Meghan. For some women, raising their families is ambition. It's just expressed differently. Meghan waved a manicured hand, as though swatting away the thought. Yes, I suppose that's the comforting narrative, but it's not one I subscribe to. Some of us are destined for more. The words hung in the air like smoke. The audience stayed silent, stunned. Lara's jaw flexed, but she managed to keep her tone level. Well, she said slowly, Desti has many definitions. We'll let the viewers decide which ones inspire them. The band queued up the transition to commercial, but the mood in the studio had shifted entirely. What began as a graceful exchange was now brittle, each word a shot of glass. And while Lara Spencer still sat with her trademark composure, the spark behind her eyes told a different story. Patience, even in the kindest hands, has limits, and Meghan Markle was pushing every inch of them. When the cameras rolled again, the audience clapped, but the sound was subdued as though they too sensed the storm building on stage. Lara Spencer, poised as ever, smiled through the tension, her hands folded neatly on the desk. Meghan Markle leaned back in her chair, one hand brushing a lock of hair from her shoulder, the other resting languidly on the armrest. Her expression was serene, almost smug, as if the entire morning belonged to her. Welcome back to Good Morning America, Lara began, her voice even and professional. We're here with Meghan Markle, discussing her projects, her advocacy, and her outlook on leadership. Meghan's lips curved faintly. Yes, she said softly, though I do sometimes wonder if people are ready for leadership in its truest form. It requires listening to someone who refuses to dilute herself for approval. The statement landed like a gauntlet. A murmur fluttered through the audience. Lara kept her composure, but her shoulders stiffened just slightly. That's certainly one perspective, Lara replied gently. But leadership can also mean meeting people where they are, helping them feel included. Meghan's eyes sharpened. Inclusion doesn't mean lowering yourself to the least common denominator. It means pulling people upward to where you already stand. The silence that followed was heavy. Lara's smile didn't waver, but her throat tightened. She shifted her cards, eyes flicking briefly at the audience before returning to Meghan. Let's talk about the documentary you released last year, Lara said, carefully measured. It received praise, but also criticism. Some viewers felt it was more about image than substance. How do you respond to that? Meghan's smile thinned, her voice laced with irritation. I respond by reminding people that producing a global documentary while raising 2 children is substance enough. If critics can't see that, perhaps it's because they have never achieved anything comparable. The audience gasped. Lara's posture stayed elegant, but the faintest crease appeared between her brows. Many would say raising children and balancing work is an achievement in itself, regardless of the scale, she offered. Of course, Meghan replied smoothly, though the condescension was unmistakable. But there's a difference between juggling daily errands and shaping global conversations. I operate on a different level. The crowd shifted uncomfortably. The murmurs were louder now, rippling like wind through tall grass. Lara leaned forward slightly, her tone still gentle but firmer. Some might say statements like that risk alienating people who could otherwise be inspired by your story. Do you worry about that? Meghan tilted her head, her smile icy. Not particularly. If someone is alienated by ambition, then perhaps they were never meant to be inspired in the first place. There was no applause this time, only silence. The cameras caught Lara's controlled inhale, her lashes lowering just enough to betray a flicker of irritation. She steadied herself and tried again. You've spoken often about empowerment for the everyday woman balancing multiple roles: career, family, personal growth. What's your message to her? Meghan didn't hesitate. My message is stop thinking of yourself as everyday. Stop glorifying struggle as though it's noble. Elevate. Demand more. Expect more. Don't be content with mediocrity. The word mediocrity echoed in the studio like a slap. Audience members shifted, whispering to each other. Lara's hands tightened around her cards, though her voice remained calm. Struggle can be noble, she said carefully. Many viewers watching right now may feel dismissed by that word. Do you think there's room for honoring resilience as well as ambition? Meghan waved a hand, her smile cool and unbothered. Resilience is just survival with branding. What matters is transformation. I'm not here to celebrate people for enduring. I'm here to show them how to transcend. The gasps from the audience were audible now. A woman in the front row shook her head. Lara's lips pressed together tightly before she released them in a polite smile. Transformation takes many forms, she said. Sometimes it's as simple as providing for your family. Sometimes it's leading a classroom or working 2 jobs or being present for loved ones. Meghan's reply came quick and sharp. And sometimes that's just settling. The crowd reacted. Some gasped. Others booed softly. The tension in the studio was no longer subtle. It was suffocating. Lara's poise faltered for the first time. She blinked slowly, her eyes narrowing almost imperceptibly. You know, Meghan, I think it's important to recognize that viewers tuning in right now are working incredibly hard under circumstances very different from yours. They don't all have staff, resources, or platforms. Meghan crossed her legs, her diamond ring catching the light. And maybe that's why they're tuning in, to learn from someone who has transcended those limitations. The arrogance was palpable. The audience murmured again, louder now, the discomfort undeniable. Lara inhaled, her patience fraying at the edges. Her voice was still calm, but there was iron beneath it. Or maybe they're tuning in for empathy, not condescension. Maybe they want connection more than instruction. Meghan's smile never wavered. Empathy has its place, but leadership requires authority, and sometimes authority doesn't sound like comfort. It sounds like truth. The audience's reaction was mixed. Some clapped hesitantly, others sat in uneasy silence. Truth, Lara said softly, her voice measured, can either heal or harm, depending on how it's delivered. Meghan leaned forward, her eyes glinting. Then maybe people need to learn to stop being so fragile. The air snapped like a wire pulled taut. The audience gasped in unison. Lara's eyes widened just enough to reveal the crack in her calm before narrowing again. With quiet fury. Fragile? she repeated, her voice steady but low. You've called ordinary people fragile for wanting kindness. Meghan didn't blink. Yes, if they want kindness, they should seek it at home. Out here in the real world, it's about strength. The words fell like stones in a glass house. The audience buzzed, half in shock, half in indignation. Lara's lips curved into a thin, uncharacteristic smile, but her eyes were hard now, unflinching. For the first time all morning, the poised host looked like a woman at her absolute limit. The silence in the studio was heavy, the kind that pressed down on every chest in the audience. Meghan Markle sat elegantly with her chin tilted upward, eyes flashing with certainty. Lara Spencer, usually the epitome of calm professionalism, sat across from her with her hands folded so tightly the knuckles had turned pale. Fragile, Laura repeated, her voice low but cutting. That's what you think ordinary people are. Fragile for wanting compassion. Meghan smirked faintly. Yes, the world rewards strength, Laura. That's why I'm sitting here and they're sitting out there. She gestured toward the audience with a dismissive flick of her wrist. The reaction was immediate. Gasps, murmurs, even a few boos. The studio was no longer charmed. It was offended. Lara leaned forward slightly, her voice steady but firm. You know, Meghan, I've sat across from world leaders, survivors, mothers working 3 jobs, and people who've endured things you couldn't imagine. And not one of them dismissed empathy as weakness. Meghan waved a hand as if brushing away a gnat. Well, perhaps they needed empathy more than I do. I've evolved past it. The arrogance in her tone cracked the last thread of Lara's composure. She inhaled, eyes narrowing, her voice sharpening like glass. Evolved past it? Meghan, you sit here acting like the world owes you reverence because you married into a title. But let's be clear, titles don't build character. Work does. Respect does. And frankly, your answers this morning have shown none of it. The audience erupted in applause, their pent-up frustrations spilling into cheers. Meghan's smile faltered, her eyes darting nervously toward the crowd. I don't think you understand, she began. No, Laura cut in, her voice rising for the first time. I understand perfectly. You've come onto this stage acting like a spoiled child, dismissing every question as beneath you. You've looked down on ordinary people as if their lives are insignificant compared to yours, and you've made it painfully clear that the only thing you value is the reflection of your own voice. Meghan's face flushed crimson. She shifted in her seat, her composure cracking. That's not fair. It's more than fair, Lara snapped, her patience finally gone. Because this show isn't about stroking egos. It's about connecting with people. And what you've done is insult them. Our viewers, our audience, and frankly every woman who's worked hard without leaning on a husband's title to stay relevant. The studio gasped, then applauded again, louder this time. Meghan's eyes widened, shimmering with tears. How dare you, she whispered, her voice shaking. I've sacrificed. Sacrifice? Laura said, leaning forward. Sacrifice is the mother skipping meals to feed her kids. Sacrifice is the nurse pulling double shifts. Sacrifice is the teacher buying supplies with her own paycheck. Sacrifice is not walking away from a palace with Netflix deals and then crying about privacy. Don't you dare call that sacrifice. The audience was on its feet now, clapping and cheering. Meghan's tears spilled over, streaking her carefully applied makeup. She fumbled with her microphone, her voice cracking. I don't have to sit here and be attacked like this, she said, standing abruptly. No, you don't, Lara replied, her voice sharp but calm now. Because this interview is over. Meghan, you are excused. The words landed like a gavel. Security stepped subtly forward, though Meghan was already moving, clutching her notes and wiping her tears. She stormed off stage, her heels clicking sharply against the floor, the sound echoing in the silent moment after. The cameras caught every second, her retreating figure, the stunned faces of the audience, Lara Spencer sitting tall at her desk, eyes unflinching. When the doors closed behind Meghan, Lara turned back to the camera, her voice steady and resolute. Here on Good Morning America, we believe in respect. Respect for our viewers, our audience, and every story we share. And when that respect is broken, we stand for the people who tune in every morning, not for entitlement. We'll be right back. The crowd erupted in thunderous applause as the band played them to commercial, the set buzzing with energy. And just like that, the interview that began with courtesy and polish had ended in chaos. Meghan Markle leaving in tears, Lara Spencer standing her ground, and daytime television forever marked by one of its most unforgettable showdowns. What did you think of this explosive clash? Was Lara right to finally call her out, or did things go too far? Let me know in the comments below. And don't forget, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss the next unbelievable showdown.